Okay, for problem number 12, we have three variables, and the whole goal of the three variables is I want to be able to get it down to two equations that only have two variables so I can do elimination like normal. And just looking at the problem, you can see how the x's are the same in front of the first two equations. So I could choose to get rid of the x's. Or if you also notice, see how there's a negative 4 in front of y? I could easily multiply that middle equation by 4 to get a positive 4y there in the middle so that my y's cancel out. So you just have to make a choice which one you want to get rid of. I think that I'm going to go ahead and solve with the x's. So let's go ahead and multiply one of these equations by -1 to make opposite signs in front of the 4x. So for step number 1, I'm going to take the top equation and the middle equation. I'm going to multiply one of those by -1 so that I can then get a -4x in one of those equations so that they cancel out. So if I do -1 times 4x, I get -4. -1 times 1y gives me -1y, and then -1 times -2 gives me a positive 2z. And finally, -1 times the 5 on the end, on the other side, is going to give me a -5. So once I multiply that out, I'm left with these two equations. 4x and -4x cancel out, which is what I want. -4 and -1 make -5y. 4z and 2z make 6z. And -4 and -5 make -9. So the very first step is finished. I now have a variable. I only have two variables left, and this equation. So the goal is I want to get one more equation that has just y and z in it, so I can use elimination like normal. So I have to use the third equation that I haven't used yet. And I think what I'm going to do is, since I want to make a -3y, I want to get rid of we got rid of x. Since I want to get rid of the -3, it really doesn't matter which equation I use, either the first or middle, because they're both exactly the same in front of x. So let's just go ahead and I will do the bottom and middle for step 2. So I'm going to take the bottom equation, so I need to multiply that 4 by a -3. Sorry, a positive 3, because I want a positive 12x. And I'm going to multiply that bottom equation by 4 to make it a -12x. If I do that, I'm going to get 12x. 3 times 1 is 3y. 3 times -2 is -6z. And then 3 times 5 is 15. So the top equation is done. 4 times -3 is -12. 4 times -3 is -12y. 4 times -4 gives me -16z. And then 4 times -16 on the end is going to give me a negative. Oops, just made a mistake. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to put 24. 4 times 16 is going to be -64. So I've multiplied the top equation here in the red by 3 and the bottom equation by 4. That way I end up with 12 and -12 in front of my x's. If I add those equations together, the 12x's cancel out. 3 and -12 make -y. -6 and -16z make -22z. And then 15 and 64 are going to give me negative 49. So now that I have two equations with just y and z, I then want to do elimination again with those two. So step 3 is I'm going to take both of those equations that I got from adding steps 1 and steps 2 together, and I'm going to use elimination again to get rid of either y or get rid of z. Well, the numbers in front of y look smaller than the numbers in front of z, so let me go ahead and get rid of y's. See how they're both negative? I'm going to multiply one of those by a negative number to make it positive, because I want opposite signs. So I'm going to multiply the top equation by 9, and I'm going to multiply the bottom equation by negative 5, so I end up with a positive 45y on the bottom, and then a negative 45y right above that, so that they cancel out. So 9 times negative 5 is negative 45y. 9 times 6 is going to give me 54z. And then 9 times 9, negative 9 on the end, is going to give me negative 81. So that top equation's been multiplied. Negative 5 times negative 9 is going to give me a positive 45y. Negative 5 times negative 22 is going to give me a positive 110. And then negative 5 times negative 49 on the end is going to give me a positive 245. So now that when I add these equations together, the y's cancel out, I'm left with 164z equals, and if I add 245 and negative 81 together, I get 164. Divide both sides by 164, and z equals 1. So there's the first part of my solution. Z equals 1. And remember, when we write our solution, it's in alphabetical order, x, y, z. So now I got to figure out x and y. So once I have z, the fourth step is going to be taking one of the two equations that I had with just y and z in it, and let me pick the first one. Negative 5y plus 6z equals negative 9. I am now going to put in 1 for z so that I can solve for y. So negative 5y plus 6 equals negative 9. And if I subtract 6 from both sides, I'm left with negative 5y equals negative 15. Divide both sides by negative 5, and y equals 3. So there is our y. And the fifth and final step is now solving for x. And the only equations that I have that have x in it are my original equations. So let me go ahead and pick one of those. I think I'm going to pick the middle one, the 4x plus y, because it doesn't look as complicated, and the numbers look smaller than the others. So I'm going to do 4x plus y minus 2z equals 5. And wherever there is a y, I'm going to put 3. And wherever there is a z, I'm going to put 1. Now I can solve for x. And again, negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. So positive 3 and negative 2 make positive 1. And if I subtract 1 on each side, 4x equals 4. Divide both sides by 4. And finally, x equals 1, which is our solution. So our final answer is 1, 3, 1. Hope this helps. Again, there are several different ways that you can solve these, but the process is pretty much the same.